At my son's wedding, he gave a toast. Today, I finally found my real family. His bride's parents sat across from me and smiled with pride. The banquet hall went silent. 200 guests turned to look at me. The man sitting alone at table 12, the one without a +1, the one who'd been seated near the kitchen doors where the servers kept rushing past with empty trays and dirty dishes balanced on their arms. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the polished wooden floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. Every eye in that massive room was on me now. Brandon's smile faltered. Madison touched his arm, a small gesture of concern. The Clarks, Dennis and Valerie, sitting at the head table like royalty presiding over their court, watched with expressions that shifted from curiosity to confusion to something approaching concern. I walked to his table. Each step felt deliberate, measured. My shoes clicked against the floor. Someone coughed. A glass clinked. The string quartet in the corner had stopped playing. I placed an envelope in front of him. Plain white. Business size. Nothing fancy. But the weight of it, both literal and metaphorical, made the table seem to tilt. Brandon's face went pale. Not white. Pale. There's a difference. White means shock, surprise, the sudden absence of color. Pale means fear. Pale is the instant your body understands something before your mind does. When every instinct warns that something awful is coming, your pressure drops, your skin chills, and your hands begin to shake. His hand moved toward the envelope, then stopped. Hovered, like he was afraid to touch it. Madison leaned in close, her perfectly painted lips forming words I couldn't hear over the ringing silence. Her dress, $40,000, Brandon had mentioned during one of his boastful phone calls, rustled as she moved. The Clarks exchanged glances. Dennis's jaw tightened. Valerie's eyes narrowed. I didn't say anything, just stood there, looking down at my son, waiting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. Let me rewind 6 months. To the moment I realized my son wasn't just selfish or careless or thoughtlessly cruel. To the moment I understood he was dangerous. And more importantly, to the moment I decided to stop being his victim and become something else entirely. Something colder. Something he would never see coming. It started with my tools. I came home from a consulting job on a Tuesday afternoon in early spring, March specifically, the 19th. I remember the date because it was the anniversary of my father's passing, and I'd spent the morning thinking about him while I worked. The job had been routine, fixing a ransomware attack for a dental office in the suburbs. Dr. Patterson's office, a small practice with 8 employees and patient records dating back 20 years. They'd opened an infected email attachment, and suddenly their entire system was locked, encrypted by malware, demanding $5,000 in Bitcoin. I'd spent 4 hours rebuilding their network from backup tapes. No ransom paid, no data lost. Dr. Patterson had been grateful, relieved, nearly in tears. She'd paid me in cash, $800, and thrown in a free teeth cleaning coupon I'd never use. I drove home tired. My back hurt from hunching over their server rack in a closet that smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. I was 65 years old, too old to be crawling around on my hands and knees, threading network cables. But the work paid the bills, kept food in the refrigerator, kept the lights on in a house that had felt too empty for too long. The garage door was closed when I pulled into my driveway. Normal. I'd left it that way that morning, the way I always did. My neighborhood wasn't particularly dangerous, but it wasn't particularly safe either. Middle-class suburbs slowly sliding into something less, houses with peeling paint and overgrown lawns, cars that had seen better decades. I parked my 12-year-old Honda Civic in the driveway. It didn't fit in the garage anyway, not with all my tools and equipment taking up space. and walked to the side door. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The door opened with its familiar creak. I hit the light switch. The fluorescent tubes flickered on, buzzing slightly, casting that harsh white light that makes everything look slightly unreal. And in that light, I saw immediately that something was wrong. The space was too empty, too clean, too open. My workbench was still there, a heavy wooden thing I'd built myself 30 years ago, scarred with saw cuts and burn marks and coffee rings. My pegboard was still mounted on the wall above it, the outline of tools visible in the dust and grime where they'd hung for years. But the tools themselves were gone. Not all of them. The cheap stuff remained, the things nobody would want. The rusted screwdrivers with broken handles, the hammer with the loose head that I kept meaning to fix, the tape measure that didn't retract properly, the bent pliers, the dull chisels, but everything valuable had vanished. My table saw, a Craftsman professional model I'd bought used 15 years ago for $1,200, gone. The empty space where it had stood looked obscene somehow, a void that shouldn't exist. My pneumatic drill set, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy, working double shifts at a server farm installation job, gone. I'd kept it in its original case, pristine, maintained perfectly. The case had sat on the shelf above my workbench for 2 years. The laser level, gone. The compound miter saw, gone. The router set with 12 different bits, gone. My father's handsaw, the one he'd given me when I was 16, the one that had hung on that pegboard for 49 years, gone. I stood there in the doorway for a long time, 5 minutes, maybe 10, just staring at the empty spaces, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My brain kept offering explanations. A burglary, kids from the neighborhood, random theft, but nothing else was missing. My lawnmower sat in the corner, untouched. My old camping gear hung from hooks on the opposite wall. The boxes of Christmas decorations that I hadn't opened since my divorce were stacked exactly where I'd left them. Even my toolbox, the one filled with miscellaneous hardware, screws, nails, things that would be easy to grab and sell, sat undisturbed on the workbench. Only the expensive tools were gone. Only the things someone would know to take if they knew exactly what they were looking for. Then I saw it. On my workbench, right in the center, placed carefully where I couldn't miss it. A key. The spare key I'd given Brandon last Christmas. Not hidden. Not tucked away. Not dropped accidentally. Placed deliberately, precisely, in the exact center of the bench. Like a calling card. Like a signature at the bottom of a confession. I picked up the key. It was warm from the overhead light. My hand wasn't shaking yet. That would come later. Right now, I was just numb. Processing. Trying to understand. Brandon had a key to my house. I'd given it to him after his mother left, after the divorce that had torn our small family into even smaller pieces. He was starting college then, 18 years old, scared of being alone. In case you need anything, I'd told him, pressing the key into his palm. In case you want to come home, this will always be your home. He'd moved out 2 years ago, gotten his own apartment in the city. He'd given back the original key during the move, handed it to me casually while carrying boxes to his car. But during the holidays, during one of those sentimental moments when you convince yourself that gestures matter, that symbols mean something, I'd made him a spare. Just in case, I'd said. Just so you know you always have a place here. He'd thanked me, hugged me, said it meant a lot, and now that key was sitting on my workbench, and $8,000 worth of tools, my father's tools, tools I'd spent decades collecting, were gone. I sat down on an old chair in the corner, the one with the split vinyl seat that I kept meaning to reupholster. The vinyl was cold against my legs. The garage smelled like motor oil and sawdust and age. I called him. My hands were steady. My voice would be steady too. I'd learned a long time ago, Working in IT, dealing with panicked clients, handling crises, that steady was more effective than angry. Steady made people nervous. Steady made them realize you were serious. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dad." His voice was bright, cheerful, the voice of someone who had absolutely nothing to worry about. "What's up? How are you?" "Where are my tools, Brandon?" The silence that followed was exactly 3 seconds long. I counted them. 1, 2, 3. In those 3 seconds I could hear everything. The intake of breath, the mental calculation happening at lightning speed, the decision about which lie to tell, which version of the truth might work, which story would get him out of this with minimal damage. "Oh," he said finally. His voice had changed. Flatter, more careful. "Yeah, I was going to tell you about that. Tell me now." "I sold them. I needed money for Madison's engagement ring. I was going to pay you back, obviously. I was going to call you this week, actually. It's bad timing that you noticed before I could explain." I sat there, holding the phone, looking at the pegboard on the wall. My father's handsaw had hung there since I was 16 years old. I'd brought it from his workshop after he passed, hung it in the same relative position it had occupied in his garage. Every time I looked at it, I thought of him, his hands guiding mine on the handle, his voice explaining how to let the saw do the work, how to trust the tool. That saw wasn't worth much, maybe $50 at a pawn shop, but it was worth everything to me, and my son had sold it. "You were going to pay me back," I repeated slowly. "Yeah, come on, Dad. You weren't using them, right? When's the last time you actually built something? You do computer stuff now. Those tools were just sitting there, collecting dust. And Madison's ring, Dad, you should see it. It's a 2-carat diamond, flawless. She cried when I proposed. She actually cried. It was perfect. Those tools were worth $8,000, Brandon. I got 6 for them. The guy at the pawn shop on 7th Street, you know the place right by the hardware store? He said that's fair market value, maybe even generous. It's basically the same thing." "It's not the same thing. And you didn't ask." He sighed, the kind of sigh that told me everything I needed to know about how he viewed this conversation. The kind of sigh that said I was being difficult, unreasonable, making a mountain out of a molehill. The kind of sigh that made the crack inside me, the one I hadn't even known was there, spread a little wider. "Dad, come on. You're seriously going to make this a thing? Really? I'm getting married. This is supposed to be a happy time. Can't you just be happy for me? Can't you just be supportive for once?" For once. Like I hadn't raised him alone after his mother left. Like I hadn't worked 2 jobs to pay for his college. Like I hadn't co-signed his first car loan, his first apartment lease. Like I hadn't been there for every single moment of his life when he needed something. I wanted to shout. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him in that moment. Exactly what kind of man steals from his own father. Exactly what kind of son sells his grandfather's tools for an engagement ring. But I didn't shout. Because I'm 65 years old, and I've learned that shouting never wins anything. Shouting is what people do when they've lost control, when they've already lost, when they have no other weapons, and I wasn't going to lose. "When are you paying me back?" I asked. My voice was calm, flat, empty of emotion. "Soon, I promise. Look, I really gotta go. Madison and I are meeting her parents for dinner, at that new steakhouse downtown. You know, the one that was on that cooking show? They filmed an episode there. It's supposed to be amazing. The Clarks are paying, obviously, they always pay. It's really nice." The Clarks. Madison's parents. The people whose opinion apparently mattered more than mine. "Okay," I said. "Okay? So we're good?" "We're good." He sounded relieved. Genuinely relieved, like he'd been worried I might actually cause problems. "Great. Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd understand. I'll call you soon, okay? We need to get together. Meet Madison properly. You're going to love her." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my garage until it got dark. until the automatic light shut off because I hadn't moved enough to trigger the motion sensor. I sat there in the darkness, holding a phone and a key, surrounded by empty spaces where my tools used to be. I never saw $1 of that money. But that was just the beginning. The next 2 months passed slowly. March turned into April, April into May. The trees bloomed, the weather warmed, life continued in its ordinary way, indifferent to the cold thing growing inside my chest. Brandon called occasionally, not often, but enough to maintain the appearance of a relationship. Once every 2 weeks, maybe. Always brief, always casual. We'd talk about his job at the investment firm, about Madison's wedding planning, about the weather, about nothing in particular. He never mentioned the tools, never mentioned paying me back. The subject simply didn't exist anymore. Like he'd convinced himself it had all been above board, just a loan between family members, something that didn't need to be discussed or acknowledged. I didn't bring it up either. I was waiting. For what? I didn't know yet. I just knew that something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in the way I viewed my relationship with my son. The crack that had started in my garage that Tuesday evening continued to spread, slowly, invisibly, but definitely. I went to work, fixed networks, rebuilt servers, dealt with ransomware and phishing attacks, and all the boring, necessary infrastructure that kept businesses running. I was good at my job, always had been. People trusted me because I was reliable, knowledgeable, and most importantly, I didn't panic in crises. That was the key to IT work. Staying calm when everyone else was losing their minds, when the CEO's computer crashed during a board presentation, when the accounting department couldn't access payroll 2 days before payday, when hackers locked down the entire network and demanded $50,000 in cryptocurrency. Stay calm. Assess the situation. Fix the problem. Don't let emotion interfere with logic. I was very good at that. In the evenings, I sat in my living room, the same living room where I'd taught Brandon to read, where we'd watched baseball games, where I'd fallen asleep more times than I could count after double shifts, and thought about my son, about who he'd become, or maybe who he'd always been, and I'd just been too blind to see it. Then came the call on a Thursday evening in late May. I was working on a client's network security audit, sitting at my desk with 3 monitors displaying firewall logs and intrusion detection alerts. The client was a small law firm that had been hacked 6 months ago. Nothing major, just some stolen client information and minor embarrassment. And now they wanted a complete security overhaul. I was deep in the work, tracking potential vulnerabilities, when my phone rang. Brandon's name on the screen. I almost didn't pick up. My hand hovered over the phone, and for a moment I thought about letting it go to voicemail. But old habits are hard to break. I answered. "Dad, I need your help. It's an emergency." His voice was different, urgent, scared. The kind of scared that bypasses logic and hits directly at instinct. The kind of scared that makes a father's protective impulses kick in automatically before the rational part of the brain has a chance to interfere. "What kind of emergency?" I asked, already minimizing the security logs on my screens. "I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me? Please? It's important. It's really important." "Where?" "That diner off Route 33. You know the one, Betty's, where we used to go for breakfast when I was in high school. Can you be there in 30 minutes? "I can be there in 20. "Thanks, Dad. Thank you. I'll see you there." He hung up before I could ask any questions. I grabbed my keys and headed out. Traffic was light. Rush hour was over and the evening commuters had already made it home. I made it to the diner in 18 minutes, pulling into the parking lot just as the sun was setting behind the trees that lined the highway. Betty's Diner was exactly the kind of place its name suggested. Chrome and vinyl, red booths, checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner that hadn't worked in a decade. Brandon and I had come here every Saturday morning during his junior and senior years of high school. Pancakes and bacon and terrible coffee that I'd drink anyway, while he told me about his classes, his friends, his plans for the future. That had been 15 years ago, a lifetime ago. Brandon's BMW was parked near the entrance, black, new, sleek. I'd never seen it before. He must have bought it recently, or leased it. Probably leased. That seemed more his style now. The appearance of success without the substance. I parked my Honda 3 spaces away. The contrast between the vehicles was almost comical. His car probably cost more than I made in a year. Inside, the diner was half empty. A few truckers at the counter, an elderly couple in a corner booth, a waitress who looked tired and bored. Brandon was in our old booth, the one by the window with a view of the parking lot. He was wearing a suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably Italian. His hair was styled with product. His watch caught the fluorescent light as he waved me over. I slid into the booth across from him. The vinyl was cracked, the same crack that had been there 15 years ago. Some things never changed. A waitress appeared immediately, not the same one from back then, but she had that same efficient, seen-it-all manner. She poured coffee I didn't want into cups that had probably been used 1,000 times that day, disappeared without asking if we wanted food. Brandon wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. His knuckles were white. "What's the emergency?" I asked. He looked around, as if checking whether anyone could overhear us. The nearest occupied booth was 20 feet away. "I made a bad investment, a really bad one." "Go on." "There was this real estate development deal, a shopping center out in Riverside County. New construction, prime location, right off the highway. The developer had all the permits lined up, all the financing secured. It was a sure thing. Everyone at work was talking about it." "There's no such thing as a sure thing, Brandon. I know that now." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The whole project fell through. Environmental issues, some endangered bird nesting in the area or something, then permit problems, then the bank pulled out. It was a domino effect. Everything collapsed." "How much did you put in?" He didn't answer immediately, just looked down at his coffee, watching the steam rise. "Brandon, how much?" 15,000. I sat back against the cracked vinyl. $15,000. Nearly twice what he'd stolen from me. That's a lot of money. I know. And now the developer's demanding it back. There's this clause in the contract about returning investor capital if the project doesn't break ground within 6 months. And if I don't pay by Friday, he's threatening to sue. "Let him sue." "I can't, Dad. I'm up for a promotion at work. Senior analyst. It's a huge opportunity. 6-figure salary, stock options, the whole package. But if they find out I'm being sued, if this becomes public, I'm done. They'll pass me over, probably find a reason to let me go entirely. The firm's really sensitive about that kind of thing." I stirred my coffee, even though I had no intention of drinking it. The spoon made a soft clinking sound against the ceramic. "You're asking me for money." "I'm asking my father for help. There's a difference." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Dad, please, I'm drowning here. I made a stupid mistake, I admit that. But if you could just help me out this one time, just this once, I swear I'll pay you back, every penny, with interest, whatever you want." I looked at him. Really looked at him. His hair was perfect, every strand in place. His skin was clear, moisturized, probably using products that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. His nails were manicured. His teeth were white, professionally whitened, no doubt. He looked healthy and successful and completely unlike someone who was drowning. But he was my son. And that instinct, the one that evolution hardwired into parents, the one that makes you want to protect your children even when they don't deserve it, even when they've hurt you, that instinct doesn't turn off. Not completely, not even when you should know better. I thought about my savings account, $22,000. That's what was left after decades of work, after paying for his college, after co-signing loans, after all the ways I'd supported him over the years. $22,000 that was supposed to be my safety net, my retirement cushion for when the consulting work dried up and Social Security wasn't enough to cover rent and food and medicine. When will you pay me back? I asked. 6 months, maximum. I'll have the promotion by then. The salary increase alone will cover it. And I'll pay you back the money from the tools, too. Everything. I'll write you a check for $23,000, 6 months from now. I swear on my life, Dad. I looked out the window at the parking lot, at his BMW and my Honda, at the setting sun painting the sky orange and red. I'll do it, I said. Relief washed over his face instantly. His shoulders lowered, his breathing steadied, and his hands finally loosened their tight hold on the coffee cup. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me. You're saving my life right now, literally saving my life. I need you to sign something, I said. A promissory note, just to make it official, for both our sakes. For a second, just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation, the look of someone who'd been hoping this would be easier, less formal. But then it was gone, replaced by earnest gratitude. Sure, of course. Whatever you need, Dad. I understand. That's totally fair. We met at a bank the next day, Wells Fargo on 5th Street, the branch I'd been using for 30 years. The teller knew me by name. I'd drawn up a simple promissory note the night before. Nothing fancy. I'd found a template online and filled in the details. Brandon Brooks owed Gregory Brooks $15,000 to be repaid in full within 6 months at 0 interest. Simple, clear, legally binding. We sat at a desk in the bank lobby. Brandon signed without reading it. His signature was fast, casual, the signature of someone who signed documents all the time and never thought twice about it. I wired him the money that afternoon. $15,000, transferred electronically from my savings account to his checking account. I watched the numbers on my balance decrease. 22,000 became 7,000. $7,000 between me and homelessness if something went wrong. He texted me 2 hours later. Got it. Thanks again, Dad. You're a lifesaver. Literally. I owe you everything. 3 days later, I found out the truth. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, is 73 years old. She's lived on my street for 40 years, raised 3 children in the house next to mine, buried her husband 5 years ago. She brings me cookies at Christmas, gingerbread men with too much icing. She tells me about her grandchildren, 7 of them now, scattered across 3 states. She's kind and generous and lonely. She's also the neighborhood's information network. She knows everything about everyone, who's getting divorced, who lost their job, who's sick, who's having an affair. Not because she's malicious. She's not. She's just observant and social and talks to everyone. I was checking my mail on a Saturday morning when she caught me. "Gregory," she called from her porch, waving enthusiastically. "Did you see Brandon's new car? That BMW? Beautiful machine. Must have cost a fortune." "I saw it," I said, flipping through bills and junk mail. "He must be doing really well at that investment firm. My niece Linda works there, you know, in human resources. She says Brandon's quite the rising star, always volunteering for extra projects, always impressing the partners." "That's good to hear." She mentioned seeing him at Gatsby's last week. Mrs. Patterson leaned on her porch railing, settling in for a proper conversation. "That expensive steakhouse downtown? The one where they dry age their own beef?" Linda was there with her husband for their anniversary. She said Brandon was with Madison and her parents. They looked very happy, very celebratory. Something cold settled in my stomach. "Celebrating what?" "Oh, I assumed it was the engagement. Or maybe the promotion he's been working toward." She smiled. Linda said they ordered the most expensive wine on the menu. 2 bottles. A Cabernet something or other. $300 a bottle. Can you imagine? I've never spent that much on wine in my life. I couldn't imagine, because 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, my son had sat across from me in a diner and told me he was drowning, that he was desperate, that a developer was threatening to sue him, that his career was on the line. And instead of paying that developer, he'd taken my money. my retirement money, and used it to celebrate at a $600 dinner. They also seemed to be talking about real estate, Mrs. Patterson continued. Linda couldn't hear everything, but she caught something about a down payment. I think they might be buying a condo together. Madison and Brandon, isn't that lovely? Starting their life together properly. A down payment, $15,000. Down payment on a condo. That's lovely, I heard myself say. My voice sounded normal, friendly even. You must be so proud of him, Gregory. He's really made something of himself. I am, very proud. We chatted for a few more minutes about nothing. The weather, the new family moving in 3 houses down, the pothole on Elm Street that nobody seemed willing to fix. Then I excused myself and went inside. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped Brandon with his homework, where we'd eaten dinner together every night for 18 years, where I'd taught him to balance a checkbook, to cook basic meals, to manage money responsibly. The promissory note, my copy, was in a folder in my desk. I pulled it out and looked at it. Brandon's signature at the bottom, his promise to pay me back within 6 months, a promise as worthless as every other promise he'd ever made. I called him. He didn't answer. I waited 5 minutes and called again. No answer. On the 3rd call, he finally texted back, Dad, I'm with Madison and her family. Can this wait? Kind of in the middle of something. It couldn't wait. But it did. Because what was I going to do? Drive to wherever he was and confront him in front of the Clarks? Show up at his apartment and demand answers? Call the police and report my own son for fraud? Because that's what this was. Fraud. Obtaining money under false pretenses? I sat at my kitchen table until the light outside faded. Until the house grew dark and I didn't bother turning on lights. Until I was sitting in shadows. Alone. In a house that had felt empty for 20 years, but had never felt quite this empty before. And that's when I realized something cold and clear and liberating. Brandon didn't see me as his father anymore. Maybe he never had. Maybe I'd been deluding myself for years, clinging to a relationship that only existed in my mind. Maybe to him, I'd always been just a resource, an ATM machine, something to be used when convenient and ignored when not. And if that's how he wanted to play it, then fine, I could play too. But I wouldn't play fair. I wouldn't play by the rules of fatherhood and family and all those soft, sentimental bonds that I'd thought meant something. I would play to win, and I would destroy him. I needed help. Real help. Not the kind that comes from friends, because I didn't have many, most having drifted away during my divorce and the hard years that followed. Not the kind that comes from family, because my family consisted of a son who was stealing from me and an ex-wife who'd remarried and moved to Arizona. I needed professional help, the kind you pay for. Samuel Pierce was a corporate lawyer I'd worked with 3 years ago. His firm, Pierce, Davidson and Associates, had been hit by a ransomware attack 2 days before a major trial. The attack had locked down their entire network. Case files, depositions, exhibits, everything. The partners were panicking. The client was threatening to sue for malpractice. The IT department was useless. I'd spent 72 hours straight rebuilding their systems from backup. No sleep, barely any food, just coffee and determination and decades of experience dealing with digital disasters. I'd recovered everything, every email, every document, every scrap of data they needed for trial. I'd saved them millions of dollars in potential lawsuits and probably several careers in the process. Samuel remembered. More importantly, he owed me. He'd said as much when he'd written my check, adding a significant bonus beyond the agreed-upon rate. If you ever need anything, he'd said, shaking my hand, anything at all, legal advice, help with a contract, whatever, call me. I mean it. I called him on a Tuesday morning, using the direct line to his office that he'd written on the back of his business card. He answered on the second ring. Gregory Brooks, I haven't heard from you in a while. How are you? I need advice, legal advice, and I need it to stay completely confidential. His tone shifted immediately. Gone was the friendly warmth. In its place, sharp, professional focus. Attorney-client privilege. Whatever you tell me stays between us. When can you come in? Today? 4 o'clock. I'll clear my schedule. His office was in a glass tower downtown, one of those buildings that looked like it belonged in a bigger city. The lobby had marble floors polished to a mirror shine, abstract art on the walls, the kind that probably cost more than my house, a security desk with a guard who asked for ID and called upstairs before allowing me to proceed. The elevator had a touchscreen directory and buttons made of brushed steel. It moved smoothly and silently, the kind of elevator that cost more to install than some people made in a year. Samuel met me on the 23rd floor, stepping out of his corner office to greet me personally. He was 48, tall, fit in the way of men who had personal trainers and gym memberships they actually used. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably custom-made. His handshake was firm and professional. "Come in," he said, gesturing toward his office. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." His office had floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the entire city. The skyline stretched out behind his desk like a movie backdrop. Leather chairs, cherry-wood furniture, framed degrees and awards on the walls. We sat at a small conference table in the corner, away from his desk. Samuel pulled out a yellow legal pad and an expensive pen. "Talk to me," he said. "What's going on?" I told him everything. Not the abbreviated version, not the sanitized version. The whole story, every detail, every moment of betrayal. I started with the tools, described walking into my garage and seeing the empty spaces, finding the key on my workbench, explained what those tools had meant to me, especially my father's handsaw. I told him about the phone call, about Brandon's casual admission, his complete lack of remorse, about the promise to pay me back that never materialized. Then I told him about the fake emergency, the meeting at the diner, the story about the real estate developer and the lawsuit, the $15,000 I'd given him, watching my savings account drain from $22,000 to $7,000. And finally, I told him about Mrs. Patterson, about the expensive dinner, about the down payment on a condo, about the realization that my son had looked me in the eye, spun an elaborate lie, and stolen from me again. Samuel took notes throughout, his pen moving steadily across the yellow paper. His expression never changed. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions, just let me talk. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, studying his notes. Then he looked up. "This is fraud, civil fraud at minimum, obtaining money under false pretenses. You have a promissory note, correct?" "Yes." "And documentation of the transfers?" "Bank statements, texts, everything." "Then you could take him to court right now and probably win. Get a judgment against him, garnish his wages, put a lien on any property he owns." "How long would that take?" "A year, maybe 2. The legal system moves slowly." "And what would I get at the end?" "Your money back, with interest and legal fees if the judge is sympathetic." I shook my head. "That's not enough." Samuel leaned back in his chair, studying me. "What do you want, Gregory?" "I want him to understand what he did. I want him to feel what I felt. I want him humiliated, destroyed. I want everyone who matters to him, Madison, her parents, his colleagues, to see exactly who he is. That's revenge. That's justice." Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who recognized something familiar, someone who understood the difference between legal victory and actual satisfaction. "You've changed," he said. "The Gregory I met 3 years ago wouldn't have said any of this. The Gregory you met 3 years ago still had hope, still believed in things like family and loyalty and doing the right thing. And now? Now I have clarity." He nodded slowly as if I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. Then he pulled out a fresh page on his legal pad and uncapped his pen. Tell me about the wedding. What about it? When is it? 2 months, late July. Have you been invited? Yes. Father of the groom. I'll probably be mentioned in the toast. Maybe even asked to say a few words. Samuel's smile widened. Perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Here's what we're going to do. He spent the next hour explaining his plan. It was brilliant, elegant, ruthless. It would give Brandon exactly enough rope to hang himself, and it would all detonate at the worst possible moment, in front of everyone who mattered to him, at the event where he was trying to cement his new life and new family. We need documentation, Samuel said. Every interaction from here on out needs to be recorded, saved, backed up. Every text message, every email, every transfer, every promise he makes. We're building a legal case, but more importantly, we're building a narrative. A narrative? Stories matter, Gregory. Courts technically run on facts, but they really run on stories. And we're going to tell a story that's so clear, so damning, that when it comes out, there will be no ambiguity, no room for interpretation, just truth. What do I need to do? Play the part. Be the generous father, the pushover, the man who will do anything for his son. Let him think he's won. Let him get comfortable, confident, arrogant. The more rope we give him, the harder he'll fall. I can do that. Can you? Because it's going to hurt. He's going to take more from you, more money, more respect, more dignity. You'll need to smile and nod while he treats you like trash. You'll need to endure humiliation in front of his new family. Can you do that? I thought about my empty garage, my depleted savings account, the key on my workbench, the lies, the manipulation, the complete absence of remorse. Yes, I said. I can do that. Good, because if we do this right, if we're patient and careful and thorough, we won't just beat him in court. We'll destroy everything he's trying to build, his relationship with Madison, his standing with her family, his reputation, his career, everything. That's what I want. Samuel extended his hand across the table. Then let's burn his world down. We shook on it. His grip was firm, professional, the grip of someone who understood that sometimes justice doesn't come from the courts or the law or any official system. Sometimes it comes from patience and planning and perfect timing. Sometimes it comes from revenge. One more thing, Samuel said as I stood to leave. This will get ugly. When it all comes out, people will judge you. They'll say you went too far. That revenge isn't worth it. That you should have been the bigger man. That you should have forgiven him because he's your son. Let them. You're sure? Because there's no going back once we start this. Once you commit, you have to see it through. I looked out his window at the city below. Somewhere out there, my son was probably having lunch at an expensive restaurant, laughing with his fiancée, planning his perfect wedding, building his perfect life. Erasing me from his story brick by brick. I'm sure, I said. 1 week later, exactly as Samuel had predicted, Brandon called. His voice was cheerful, almost boyish. The voice he used to use when he was 10 years old and wanted permission to do something. The voice that had always worked on me. Hey, Dad. So Madison and I were talking about the wedding. And we realized something. This is a really special day. A really special moment for all of us. A family moment, you know? Okay, I said, my voice carefully neutral. And you're still my father. I mean, I know things have been kind of weird lately, kind of complicated. But at the end of the day, you're still my dad. You raised me. You made me who I am. And we want you to be part of this. We want you, not I want you. We. He was already speaking as half of a couple, already prioritizing Madison's opinion over his own. Or maybe just using her as a shield. I appreciate that, I said. So here's the thing. Weddings are expensive. Like, really expensive. More expensive than I ever imagined. The venue alone is $30,000. The catering is another $20,000. The photographer Madison wants is $10,000. It adds up fast. I imagine it does. Madison's parents are covering most of it. They've been incredibly generous, but we were hoping, Madison and I, that maybe you could contribute too, to help with some of the costs. Nothing major. Just, your share as the father of the groom. Your share. Like this was a business transaction. Like I was an investor in Brandon and Madison Incorporated. How much were you thinking? I asked. Well, we've been doing the math and we figured $10,000 would be appropriate. That covers your portion of the reception, some of the flowers, part of the open bar. $10,000. More than I had in my savings account. On the other end of the phone, Samuel's instructions echoed in my mind. Play the part. Be the generous father. Let him dig himself deeper. That's a lot of money, Brandon, I said slowly. I know it is. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime event, Dad. And honestly, after everything you've done for me, I want you to feel like you're really part of this, like you're making a meaningful contribution. After everything I'd done for him. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. Let me think about it, I said. Sure, absolutely. Take your time. But, we kind of need to know soon. The caterer needs final numbers by next week, and we need to secure the photographer. I'll let you know by Friday. Friday works. Thanks, Dad. This really means a lot. He hung up before I could respond. I immediately called Samuel and told him about the conversation. Perfect, he said. This is perfect. Tell him yes. I don't have $10,000, Samuel. I have $7,000 left in my account. I'll loan you the difference. You'll pay me back when we're done. Trust me, Gregory. This is an investment, and the return is going to be substantial. What am I investing in? Your son's destruction. Now tell me, did he mention anything in writing? Texts? Emails? Not yet. Just the phone call. Get him to put it in writing. Tell him you need something official for your records. A breakdown of costs, a receipt, anything with his signature on it. The more documentation we have, the better. I met Brandon 2 days later to discuss the wedding contribution. He suggested we meet at a Starbucks near his office, neutral ground, busy, public. The kind of place where serious conversations happened over overpriced coffee. He showed up wearing another expensive suit, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. He looked successful, confident, like a man who had the world figured out. He ordered a complicated drink, something with extra shots and special milk and flavor pumps, that cost $8. I got regular coffee. We sat at a table by the window. So, he said, opening his portfolio and pulling out a spreadsheet, Madison's mom helped put this together. She's really organized. You'll like her when you meet her properly. She ran her own event planning business for 20 years. He slid the spreadsheet across the table. It was printed on expensive paper, formatted professionally, color-coded. At the top, Brooks Clark wedding budget. I scanned the numbers. Venue, $32,000. Catering, $24,000. Photography, $12,000. Flowers, $8,000. DJ, $3,000. The list went on and on. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, father of the groom contribution, $10,000. This is very detailed, I said. Madison's family believes in proper planning. They're very detail-oriented. It's one of the things I love about them. Them, not her. Them. He loved the entire family now. What exactly does my $10,000 cover? It's listed there. Part of the reception costs, some of the bar service, portion of the floral arrangements. Basically, your share of making sure the wedding is beautiful and memorable. Your share. That phrase again. I pulled out a pen. I'll need you to sign something for me. Just acknowledgement that I'm contributing this amount and what it's for my tax records. Brandon hesitated for just a second. Then he shrugged. Sure, no problem. I'd prepared a simple document, following Samuel's instructions. Just 3 paragraphs stating that Gregory Brooks was contributing $10,000 to the wedding of Brandon Brooks and Madison Clark, that this was a gift freely given, and that Brandon acknowledged receipt of said funds. He signed it without reading carefully. His signature was fast, casual, practiced. "When can you transfer the money?" he asked. "Next week. I need to liquidate some investments first." That was a lie. The only thing I'd be liquidating was the last of my savings, plus the $3,000 Samuel was loaning me. Perfect. That works perfectly. He slid the spreadsheet back into his portfolio. "Hey, there's one more thing." Of course there was. "What's that?" "The engagement party. Madison's parents are throwing us an engagement party next Saturday, at their estate. It's kind of a big deal, about 150 people. Madison's family, some people from work, close friends. We'd really like you to be there." "I'll be there." "Great. It's black tie, by the way. Do you have a tux?" "I have a suit." "Right, a suit, okay." He grimaced slightly. "The thing is, it's really formal. Like, really formal. Madison's dad is particular about that kind of thing. Do you think you could maybe rent a tux? There's a place on 7th Street. It's not that expensive." Not that expensive to him. But to me, with $7,000 left in my account and another $10,000 I was about to give away, every dollar mattered. "I'll see what I can do," I said. "Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate it. I know you'll make a good impression. It's important to me that Madison's family likes you. It's important to me. Not you're important to me." The subtle difference was everything. We finished our coffee, made small talk about nothing. Then he glanced at his watch, that Rolex again, and said he needed to get back to the office. "Big presentation this afternoon. The partners are going to be there. Could be the thing that tips me over for the promotion." "Good luck," I said. "Thanks. I'll text you the address for the party. Saturday at 7. Don't be late. Madison's dad is weird about punctuality." He left. I sat there for another 20 minutes, staring at the signed document, feeling the weight of what was coming. Then I called Samuel. "I got his signature." "Excellent. Scan it and email it to me. I'll add it to the file." The file must be getting pretty thick. 3 inches so far. By the time we're done, it'll be 6. Maybe more. Every signature, every text, every broken promise, it's all ammunition, Gregory, and we're going to need all of it. "Samuel?" "Yeah?" "When this is over, when we do what we're planning to do, he's going to hate me. Forever. There won't be any coming back from this." "I know. I just wanted to say that out loud. Acknowledge it. This is the point of no return." Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you want to stop?" I thought about the key on my workbench, the empty spaces in my garage, the lies, the manipulation, the casual cruelty of a son who'd stopped seeing me as a father and started seeing me as a resource to be exploited. "No," I said. "I want to finish it." "Then we're not stopping. We're going to see this through to the end, and the end is going to be spectacular." I hung up and sat there in the Starbucks until they started cleaning up for closing, surrounded by the sounds of normal life continuing around me, planning my son's destruction. I rented a tuxedo for $120 from a shop that smelled like mothballs and lost dreams. The bow tie didn't quite match the jacket, and the pants were a half-inch too short, but it would do. The Clark estate was exactly what I'd expected. Old money, expressed in architecture, 20 acres behind iron gates, a circular driveway with a fountain featuring bronze dolphins. The house itself was 3 stories of brick and white columns, like something from a plantation movie. Cars lined the driveway. Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, Porsche, a few vintage Jaguars. My 12-year-old Honda looked like a mistake, a vehicle that had gotten lost and wandered into the wrong neighborhood. A valet in a red vest took my keys with poorly concealed disappointment. Inside, the party was already in full swing. Maybe 150 people, all dressed like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. A string quartet played in one corner. I found Brandon near the bar, laughing with a group of men about his age. He saw me, and his smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. "Dad!" He waved me over. "Everyone, this is my father, Gregory Brooks." The men nodded politely. One extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Brooks. What do you do?" "IT consulting. Small business security, mostly." "Oh, that's interesting." The man's attention was already drifting away. Within 5 minutes, they'd all found excuses to leave. I didn't fit. "Thanks for coming," Brandon said, his voice polite but distant. "Let me introduce you to the Clarks." He led me through French doors onto a massive terrace overlooking manicured gardens. Dennis and Valerie Clark stood at the center of a group, clearly the hosts, clearly in their element. Dennis was tall with silver hair and the kind of tan that comes from golf courses and sailing trips. Everything about him projected success, confidence, the easy authority of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. Valerie was his perfect counterpart. Late 50s but looking 40, diamonds at her throat and wrists. "Dennis, Valerie," Brandon said. "This is my father, Gregory Brooks." Dennis extended his hand, his grip calculated to establish dominance. "Gregory, good to finally meet you. Brandon's told us quite a bit about you." I doubted that was true. "You have a beautiful home," I said. "Thank you. It's been in Valerie's family for 3 generations. Valerie offered her hand to be held briefly. "Mr. Brooks, so nice of you to join us. Brandon tells me you're helping with the wedding expenses." "I am." "That's very generous. These things get terribly expensive. We're covering the venue and most of the catering, but every contribution helps." Every contribution helps. I was putting in $10,000, and to her it was just a helpful little contribution. Madison appeared at Brandon's side. Up close, she was striking. Mid-20s, blonde, beautiful in that expensive way. Her dress probably cost more than I made in a month. "Mr. Brooks," she said with a practiced smile, "I'm so glad you could make it. Brandon's told me so much about you. He says you raised him all by yourself, after the divorce. That must have been very difficult." The subtle dig, the reminder that I was divorced, single, alone, the implication that I'd failed. "We managed," I said. "Well, he turned out wonderfully. We're so lucky to have found each other." She squeezed Brandon's arm possessively. I excused myself and found a quiet corner. From there, I could watch the party without being part of it. Brandon worked the room like he'd been born to it. Natural, like he'd been practicing his whole life for this moment. Samuel appeared beside me. I hadn't known he was invited, but of course he was. "Hell of a party," he said quietly. "Hell of something. I brought the papers. They're in my car." We met in his Mercedes 15 minutes later. He had a briefcase full of documents waiting. "Sign here, and here, initial here." I signed everything. Power of attorney, trust documents, gift agreements that weren't actually gifts. "This creates a shell trust," Samuel explained. "On paper, it looks like you're gifting assets to Brandon. In reality, every dollar is structured as a loan with very specific clauses." "What kind of clauses?" "Fraud, misrepresentation, failure to disclose material facts. If triggered, they don't just void the current agreement, they retroactively void everything." "Meaning?" "Meaning, if he signs these, and he will, he'll be legally obligated to return everything. The $10,000 for the wedding, the $15,000 for the fake emergency, even the $6,000 from the tools, everything, with interest. And if he doesn't, then we trigger the clauses. All of his assets, the condo, his savings, everything, get transferred to you as collateral. It'll wipe him out completely." I looked at the signed documents. When? The wedding, at the moment of his greatest triumph, surrounded by everyone who matters to him, will detonate it. He'll be destroyed. Completely. The Clarks will drop him immediately. Madison will probably leave him. His firm will let him go. He'll lose everything. Good. Samuel studied me. "You've really changed, Gregory." A few months ago, I still thought he was my son. Now I know better. I went back to the party. Brandon saw me and waved, smiling. 2 months, I thought. 2 months until the wedding. 2 months until I burned his world down. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in humiliation. Brandon called every few days with new requests. A few hundred for the rehearsal dinner, another 1,000 for the honeymoon fund. Could I contribute to the groomsmen's gifts? The invitation printing ran over budget. Each time, I said yes. Each time, Samuel documented everything. I was borrowing money from Samuel now. He never mentioned interest. Consider it an investment, he said. 2 weeks before the wedding, Brandon asked me to meet him at a bank. We met at a Wells Fargo. He was already there with a banker named Mr. Hayes. Your son and his future in-laws are purchasing a property, Hayes explained. They've asked if you'd be willing to serve as a guarantor for the loan. I looked at the papers. The number at the top made my stomach drop, $300,000. Why do they need a guarantor? Brandon shifted uncomfortably. It's a tax thing, Dad. Their accountant recommended it. But you understand I'm being asked to guarantee $300,000. It's just a formality. You won't actually be responsible for anything. I looked at Hayes. Is that accurate? Hayes cleared his throat. Technically, as a cosigner, you would be liable if the primary borrowers default. However, given the financial standing of all parties, that's highly unlikely. But possible. Theoretically, yes. Brandon leaned forward. Dad, come on. This is my future. We need this condo. Her parents are already investing so much. This is the least we can do. I set the papers down. I need to review these with my lawyer. Your lawyer? Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I realized I probably should have one. This is ridiculous. It's just a signature. Brandon, this is $300,000. If something goes wrong, I'd lose everything. Brandon's face darkened. Fine. Take it to your precious lawyer. But we need an answer by Monday. I'll have an answer by Monday. I stood to leave. Brandon grabbed my arm. Dad, don't screw this up for me. I looked down at his hand on my arm. I'll do my best. I called Samuel from the parking lot. He just tried to get me to co-sign a $300,000 loan. Did you sign? No. Perfect. Bring me the papers. Pattern of behavior, escalating demands. It's all building toward the perfect case. Samuel photocopied everything, added it to the file. Tell him you can't co-sign, Samuel said. After review with your attorney, the risk is too high. We want him furious. We want him resentful. I called Brandon that evening. The silence lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then, you're kidding. I'm not. The risk is too high. Nothing would go wrong. Do you have any idea what this is going to cost me? Madison's parents went out on a limb for this, and now I have to tell them my father won't help. I'm protecting my financial security. You're ruining my life. I'm protecting mine. He hung up. That night, I sat in my living room in the dark, wondering if I was going too far. Then I thought about my empty garage, my depleted savings, every lie, every manipulation. No, I wasn't going far enough. 5 days before the wedding, Brandon called me at 2 a.m. I grabbed the phone, heart pounding. Dad? His voice was slurred, thick with alcohol. Dad, you awake? I am now. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. I'm getting married, Dad. Married. I could hear music in the background, voices, laughter. Bachelor party. That's great, Brandon. Is it? Because you don't seem happy for me. Every time I see you, I can feel it. The disapproval, like I'm not good enough. Brandon, you're drunk. Maybe we should talk tomorrow. No, we're talking now, because I need you to hear this. He paused, breathing heavily. You were never there for me. After Mom left, you checked out. You were always working, always tired, always distant. I raised myself, Dad, not you. Each word was a knife. I did the best I could. Your best sucked. You know what the Clarks have been to me? They've been more parents in 6 months than you were in 30 years. They actually listen. They actually care about my career, my future. Is that what you think you were to me? An obligation? What else? You never remarried, never dated, never had a life. You just worked and came home and sat in that depressing house. Well, guess what? I'm relieved I'm finally getting away from you. Something inside me shifted. Then I'm happy I could help with the wedding. I'm getting a real family, people who actually care, people who are successful and know how the world works, not some washed-up IT guy who couldn't even keep his wife from leaving. There it was, the final knife. Goodbye, Brandon. Wait, Dad, wait. I didn't mean... I hung up. I sat there in the dark, feeling nothing, completely empty. Then I called Samuel. He answered immediately. What happened? I told him about the call, every word, every insult. When I finished, Samuel was quiet. Then, good. Good? That call just removed any doubt you might have had, any guilt, any second thoughts. He showed you exactly who he is. And now, when we do what we're planning, you'll know it's just giving him what he deserves. I don't feel anything, Samuel. I know. That's how you know you're ready. 5 days until the wedding. 5 days until my son's world ended, and I felt absolutely nothing about it at all. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Blue sky, warm sun, gentle breeze. The kind of day people pay for and rarely get. The venue was the Clark estate, transformed. White tents on the lawn. 1,000 flowers arranged in elaborate displays. 200 white chairs in perfect rows. A string quartet warming up near the altar. I arrived early in my new suit. Samuel was already there, looking like just another wealthy guest. He gave the briefest nod. Everything was ready. The envelope was in my jacket pocket, plain white, 11 pages inside, carefully prepared, meticulously documented. I was seated at table 12, near the back, near the kitchen. The ceremony was beautiful. Madison came down the aisle in a dress that probably cost as much as a car. Brandon stood at the altar in his tuxedo, looking genuinely happy. For a moment, I felt something like regret. This could have been a celebration. Then I remembered the key on my workbench, the lies, the manipulation, the drunk phone call. The regret passed, vows were exchanged, rings presented, they kissed. Everyone applauded. The reception began. Perfect food, expensive wine, exactly the right music. Brandon and Madison had their first dance. Then it was time for the father-son dance. We danced to some song I didn't recognize. Brandon held himself stiffly, counting down the seconds. You look happy, I said. I am. This is the best day of my life. I'm glad. He looked at me strangely. Are you okay? You seem different. Just thinking about how much you've changed. He smiled, taking it as a compliment. Madison's family has shown me what success looks like, what a real family looks like. The song ended. Brandon released me immediately. Thanks for the dance, and for everything. Of course, I'm your father. He paused, something flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded and walked away. Dinner was served. Then came the speeches. The best man went first. Childhood stories, jokes, heartfelt wishes. Dennis Clark spoke eloquently about welcoming Brandon into their family. Today, we don't just gain a son-in-law, we gain a son, a real member of our family. Then Brandon stood, champagne glass in hand. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Madison and I are so grateful. He thanked the Clarks, Madison, his friends, his colleagues. Then his gaze landed on me. I also want to thank my biological father for coming today. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I appreciate his contribution. Biological father. The distance in those words was infinite. But most importantly, I want to thank my real family. He turned to the Clarks. Dennis and Valerie, you've shown me what true support looks like. You've believed in me, invested in me, helped me become who I am today, And I want you to know, today I finally found my real family. The banquet hall went silent. People turned to look at me. The clerk smiled with pride. Dennis raised his glass. Brandon stood there, beaming, and I stood up. Every eye turned toward me. I walked to the head table. Each step echoed in the quiet. I pulled out the envelope and placed it in front of Brandon. His face went pale. "What is this?" "Open it." Madison leaned in. "Brandon, what's going on?" "I don't know." His voice shook. "Open the envelope, Brandon." He did. His hands trembled as he pulled out the pages. I watched his face as he read. Confusion turned to understanding. Understanding turned to horror. "What is this?" he whispered. "It's everything. Every document you signed, every transfer you authorized, every lie documented and certified, and the legal framework that makes all of it retroactively fraudulent." "I don't understand." "That $10,000 for the wedding? It wasn't a gift. It was a loan with specific conditions you didn't read. The $15,000 for your emergency? Same thing. Even the $6,000 from my tools. All structured as loans, you're obligated to repay immediately. And because you obtained them through fraud, you've triggered penalty clauses." Madison grabbed the papers, her face going white. "This can't be legal," Brandon said. "It's completely legal. Every document you signed, every text you sent, every promise you made and broke, all documented, all sent to the appropriate authorities." "What authorities?" "Your bank, your employer, the real estate board, the Clark's attorneys." Dennis stood, his face dark. "What the hell is going on?" I turned to him. "Your new son committed fraud against me. Multiple times. I have proof. Your attorneys will receive their copy shortly." Valerie's hand went to her throat. "Fraud? Obtaining money under false pretenses. Thanks to the documents he signed, all of his assets are now subject to immediate seizure. The condo you co-invested in? Gone. His savings? Gone. His investment portfolio? Gone." Brandon stood, his face red. "You can't do this. This is my wedding." "No. This is the moment you learn what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." "You're insane." "I'm precise. There's a difference." He lunged toward me. The best man grabbed him, held him back. "Brandon, don't." But it was too late. Everyone had seen it. The explosion of rage, the truth of who he really was. Madison was crying. Dennis was shouting into his phone. Valerie looked like she might faint. Guests stood, murmuring, phones out, recording. Brandon broke free and overturned his table. Plates and glasses crashed, flowers scattered, the tablecloth dragged everything down. "You ruined my life!" he screamed. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself. I just made sure there were consequences." I turned and walked toward the exit. Samuel fell into step beside me. Behind us, chaos erupted. Shouting, crying, the sound of Brandon's world collapsing. We reached the door. I stopped and looked back one final time. Brandon stood in the wreckage of his reception, surrounded by broken glass and shattered dreams, his perfect suit stained with wine, his face twisted with rage and desperation. And I smiled, just once. "You didn't lose a father today, Brandon," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. "You finally met the man I become when I stopped being one." Then I walked out, into the perfect weather, into the rest of my life, free.